For more now on the Pennsylvania special election and its potential implications for the upcoming midterms, we go to Jeff Mason. He's the White House correspondent for Reuters. Thank you so much for talking to us. This is a state and an area where Republicans have seen gains for 15 years, a lot at stake here. If the GOP candidate loses this race, how big of a loss would this be for the president?
Well, I think it would be a huge loss for the president, and you're absolutely right to say that the Republicans have done well in Pennsylvania and in that particular district. As your reporter just mentioned, the president won that district by some 20 points in the 2016 election. So the fact that it's competitive at all is a blow. And if the Democrat wins, if Conor Lamb wins, then that will be seen as a bellwether for the November midterm elections. And really all of these special elections that we've been witnessing so far have been looked at with an eye towards November. And that's why you're seeing the White House roll out the big guns. I mean, there's a reason that President Trump is going there tonight and that he has sent people like Vice President Pence and Kellyanne Conway there already.
So is the White House worried?
I think the fact that he's showing up and the fact that they've had so many other high-powered players show up means they are worried, yes. And I think they also want, early on this year, right now, to start encouraging Republican turnout. Even if that doesn't happen in this particular special election, they need to try and reverse the momentum, if it's not behind them, to get Republicans energized and showing up again for the midterm elections in November. And that's something the president also addressed when he spoke to the CPAC Congress earlier this year.
Molly Line just spoke with somebody there, a voter, who expressed their concern for unions. Now, in the state of Pennsylvania, you have a lot of coal miners. You have a lot of people who are members of the union, a lot of blue-collar state workers. Why would this candidate, one or the other, be scrutinized if for some reason they're anti-union?
Well, unions, support for unions is typically a Democratic strength and not a Republican strength. So that's something that could absolutely help the Democrat. And the individual who was interviewed by Molly indicated that they hadn't had much luck talking to the Republican candidate. So I'm sure that is something, if it resonates with a lot of union voters, that could help Democrats. That said, you also have this sort of counterbalance or potential counterbalance from the policies that President Trump has been implementing just in the last week in terms of steel and aluminum tariffs, indicating with that his desire to help workers. And he certainly worked or tried very hard to speak vocally in favor of coal workers as well. But it comes down to, all politics is local, and this is a local race, and so we'll just have to see how it plays out. Yeah.
What does it say, though, the fact that this is such a tight race?
It says that there is a wave of enthusiasm for Democrats, and that's not unusual.
Why is that?
Well, first of all, it's not unusual historically because this is a midterm year after a presidential election, and historically, the races 2 years after a presidential race will be a bit of a correction to what happened in the presidential race 2 years before.
Right.
That said, there's also, in addition to sort of that historical background, there's just a lot of discontent among Democrats with President Trump, and that is leading to big turnouts. It led to a big turnout in Texas, and there just very recently there, and it's leading to big turnouts in other races. And the question is, will that motivation and that momentum continue in November when the stakes are so high?
Right, and that's what I want to talk about next, because
Sure.
a loss in an area that Trump handily won in 2016 in his campaign. Explain why then a loss there would make it particularly hard for Republicans to hold on to their control of the House.
So the House is up for grabs, and having right now the fact that the president and the Republican Party control both the House, the Senate, and the White House makes it much easier for him to get his policies through. If you have a race like this, which should be easy for Republicans to hold, it means that the races that aren't easy, the races that are already perhaps leaning Democratic or are purple districts, will be that much harder for Republicans to keep in line. And those are the tea leaves that people are reading when looking at the November elections.
All right. Thanks for helping us read them.
My
Jeff
pleasure.
Mason, we appreciate you coming on. Thank you.
Anytime.